The massive alien warships hung like dark metallic shadows against the starry backdrop of the Orion sector. Captain J. Kim watched the approaching vessels through the reinforced glass of the USS Resilience's bridge, his hand resting casually on the tactical console. The collective's transmission crackled through the ship's communication systems. A deep, resonant voice demanded immediate surrender of all human colonies. The message was clear: submit or be destroyed. Around J, the bridge crew remained eerily calm, their fingers hovering over control panels. Hannah Park, the communication officer, turned with a raised eyebrow. "They're serious," she muttered. J nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. Humanity had been expanding through the galaxy for decades, quietly establishing colonies on resource-rich planets. The Collective, a technologically advanced civilization, had existed for thousands of years and considered humans nothing more than primitive colonizers. What they didn't understand was human resilience. The first wave of alien attack came swiftly. Plasma-based energy weapons erupted from the massive warships, targeting human settlement zones. On the colony of New Terra, families watched in horror as bright green energy beams sliced through protective shields. But something unexpected happened. Instead of panicking, the colonists moved with practiced efficiency. Underground bunkers, designed decades earlier, activated instantly. Automated defense systems, which looked almost primitive compared to alien technology, began tracking and responding to incoming attacks. Jay watched the initial battle data streaming across his holographic displays. The Collective's attack patterns were predictable, almost ritualistic. They expected quick capitulation, a strategy that had worked with countless species before. Humans were different. Lieutenant Kong Min, a tactical specialist, began coordinating rapid response teams. Small, agile shuttles launched from hidden underground facilities, using terrain and local planetary conditions as natural camouflage. They weren't trying to win a direct confrontation, they were adapting, learning, probing the enemy's weaknesses. The alien commander, a towering creature with multiple neural processing units, couldn't comprehend the human response. Their previous encounters with emerging spacefaring civilizations had always followed a similar script: technological superiority meant immediate submission. But humans didn't read that script. On New Terra, colonists used mining equipment as makeshift weapons. Agricultural transport vehicles were quickly retrofitted with rudimentary weapon systems. Every piece of technology became a potential tool of resistance. The Collective's first wave of attacks began to slow. Their precise, calculated strikes met unexpected resistance. Human defenders used unconventional tactics, hiding signals in background radiation, using planetary magnetic fields to death. And technology into an art form of survival. Dr. Unikim's laboratory on Mars looked nothing like a traditional research center. Holographic displays flickered with complex molecular structures, while advanced nanofabrication units hummed with constant activity. Her team had been working nonstop since the first Collective attack, and their latest creation would change everything. The nano-adaptive combat suit was more than just protective gear. It was a living, breathing technological marvel that could instantly reconfigure its molecular structure. When alien weapons struck, the suit would analyze the energy signature and adapt within milliseconds, creating a defense mechanism that seemed almost magical. Initial test results were beyond promising. During simulated combat scenarios, the suits demonstrated capabilities that defied traditional understanding of material science. A plasma burst that should have vaporized a test subject instead scattered harmlessly, the suit's molecules dancing and shifting like a living shield. Lieutenant Kong Min was the first to volunteer for full-scale testing. His military background combined with a deep understanding of technological adaptation made him the perfect candidate. When he first wore the suit, the research team watched in amazement as it adjusted to his body's natural movements, becoming a second skin that responded to both environmental and combat conditions. The Mars Research Center had become humanity's most critical weapon development site. What had started as a remote scientific outpost was now the front line of technological innovation. Every captured piece of Collective technology was carefully dismantled, studied, and reimagined. Quantum computing breakthroughs allowed human strategists to predict alien attack patterns with increasing accuracy. What once seemed like random technological superiority was now being systematically decoded and understood. The collective's predictable attack strategies became their greatest weakness. Biological augmentation became another critical area of research. Dr. Yoona Kim's team developed neural interface technologies that allowed soldiers to process information faster than ever before. Reaction times improved, tactical understanding deepened, and human potential expanded beyond previous limitations. Communication networks transformed. Quantum entanglement communication systems made traditional alien scanning techniques obsolete. Messages could be transmitted instantly across vast distances, with encryption methods that seemed to bend the very laws of information transfer. On various human colonies, every technological system was being reimagined. Agricultural robots became potential combat units. Mining drones transformed into advanced reconnaissance vehicles. The line between civilian and military technology blurred completely. The most significant breakthrough came unexpectedly. A junior researcher discovered a method to manipulate quantum states in defensive systems, creating what could only be described as adaptive camouflage. Entire human settlements could now essentially become invisible to standard collective scanning technologies. Lieutenant Kong Min led the first field tests of these new technologies. During a critical engagement near the Jupiter colonies, his team demonstrated capabilities that shocked even their own researchers. Entire combat units could now shift their technological signature, becoming undetectable and unpredictable. Dr. Yoona Kim watched the combat data streams with a combination of scientific curiosity and quiet pride. Humanity wasn't just defending itself, it was evolving. Each technological challenge became an opportunity for innovation. The collective's military leadership began to realize they were facing something entirely different. These weren't just technological adaptations, this was a fundamental reimagining of what technology could do. Human creativity was turning into their most powerful weapon. Nanofabrication centers began working around the clock. What would have taken years of development was now being accomplished in weeks. The pace of human technological evolution was accelerating exponentially. Biological augmentation reached new levels. Soldiers could now process complex tactical information faster than advanced alien computer systems. Neural interfaces allowed for instant communication and coordinated responses that seemed almost supernatural. As the technological evolution continued, one thing became clear: humanity was no longer just adapting to the collective's technology. They were rewriting the entire understanding of technological potential. The Mars Research Center had become more than a scientific facility. It was the birthplace of humanity's technological renaissance, a beacon of innovation that would change the course of galactic conflict forever. The collective had provoked a species capable of turning limitations into opportunities, and technology into an art form of survival. Intelligence officer Sung-Ho Lee sat in a dimly lit room filled with advanced communication equipment. His fingers moved across holographic interfaces with practiced precision, weaving a complex web of disinformation that would slowly unravel the collective's internal structures. The collective's communication networks were vast and intricate, built on thousands of years of hierarchical communication protocols. They believed their systems were impenetrable. Sung-Ho knew better. Every complex system had vulnerabilities, and humans had become masters at finding them. Small pieces of carefully crafted information began to spread. Nothing direct or obvious, just subtle suggestions, minor contradictions that would create doubt. Lee understood that psychological warfare wasn't about massive attacks, but about introducing microscopic seeds of uncertainty. In the collective's central command structures, leadership began to question their own strategies. Reports from different sectors started showing inconsistencies. Communication channels that were once crystal clear now carried whispers of doubt and confusion. The human strategy targeted the collective's primary weakness, their rigid hierarchical system. By introducing carefully designed information fragments, Sung-Ho's team created internal tensions that spread like a silent virus through their communication networks. Military units began receiving conflicting orders. Diplomatic channels showed increasing signs of internal disagreement. What seemed like minor miscommunications were actually precisely engineered psychological disruptions. Lieutenant Kong Min's special reconnaissance teams provided critical support. They gathered intelligence not through traditional military means, but by understanding the psychological patterns of the collective's communication systems. Each piece of information was a carefully placed puzzle piece designed to create maximum confusion. The collective's leadership structure, which had remained unchanged for centuries, began to show signs of fracturing. Trusted communication protocols became sources of suspicion. Long-standing alliances started to crumble from within. Hannah Park's communication analysis team worked alongside Sung-ho, developing increasingly sophisticated methods of psychological manipulation. They understood that information was the most powerful weapon in modern warfare. Cultural differences became a critical tool. The collective's communication systems were built on absolute certainty and hierarchical trust. Humans introduced elements of doubt, uncertainty, and multiple potential interpretations. Each communication became a complex psychological puzzle. Strategic misinformation campaigns targeted specific leadership groups within the collective. Some messages suggested potential internal betrayals. Others hinted at strategic failures that might not have existed. The goal wasn't to prove anything definitively, but to create persistent doubt. Quantum communication technologies allowed these psychological attacks to spread faster than traditional communication methods. By the time the collective leadership realized what was happening, the damage was already done. Military units began questioning their commanders. Diplomatic representatives became suspicious of each other. The once unified collective started showing signs of internal fragmentation. Sung-ho Lee watched the progress with calculated patience. This wasn't about winning through direct confrontation. It was about creating a psychological landscape where victory became impossible through traditional means. The most brilliant aspect of the human strategy was its subtlety. Nothing could be directly traced back to human intervention. Each piece of information seemed to emerge naturally from the collective's own communication systems. Technological superiority meant nothing if the internal trust was compromised. The collective was discovering that their greatest weapon, their complex and supposedly impenetrable communication networks, had become their most significant vulnerability. As internal tensions grew, the collective's military and diplomatic effectiveness began to decline. Coordinated attacks became more difficult. Strategic planning turned into a maze of suspicion and second-guessing. Sung-ho understood the fundamental truth of psychological warfare: sometimes the most powerful attacks are the ones nobody can see or definitively prove. Each carefully crafted message was a silent weapon, more destructive than any physical attack. The human strategy was clear: make the enemy defeat themselves by introducing just enough uncertainty to destroy their internal cohesion. The collective had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated a species that understood the most complex battlefield was not external, but internal, the human mind. The final battle wasn't a massive confrontation of overwhelming firepower, but a precise dance of strategic brilliance. Captain J. Kim stood on the bridge of the USS Resilience, watching quantum-predicted maneuvers that seemed to defy traditional military logic. Humanity's strategy had transformed completely. Where other species would have sought total destruction, humans were engineering a victory that went beyond military conquest. The quantum computing systems predicted every potential collective move with frightening accuracy. Lieutenant Kong Min led a specialized strike team that moved like liquid through the collective's defensive positions. Their nano-adaptive suits made them nearly invisible, shifting molecular structures faster than enemy scanning systems could track. Each movement was calculated, each decision a result of millisecond-level tactical predictions. The collective's command structure was already weakened by months of psychological warfare. Internal communications had become a tangled mess of suspicion and conflicting orders. What was once a unified military machine now resembled a collection of uncertain, competing factions. Dr. Yoona Kim's technological innovations played a critical role. The adaptive shield systems could now not just defend, but actively disrupt alien weapon frequencies. Entire attack waves would suddenly dissipate before reaching their targets, leaving collective commanders confused and frustrated. Orbital battles looked more like an intricate dance than traditional warfare. Human vessels moved with an unpredictability that seemed almost organic. They would appear, strike with surgical precision, and vanish before the collective could mount a coherent response. Communication networks became battlegrounds. Hannah Park's team had introduced so many layers of disinformation that the collective could no longer trust their own communication protocols. Every transmitted order became a potential trap, every strategic discussion a potential source of internal conflict. The human approach wasn't about total destruction. It was about creating a situation where continued conflict became mathematically illogical for the collective. Each strategic move was designed to show the impossibility of their initial conquest. Smaller human colonies played crucial roles. What looked like isolated settlements were actually sophisticated defensive nodes, each capable of rapid adaptation and support. The entire human defense strategy was decentralized, making it impossible to defeat through traditional military approaches. Biological augmentations gave human soldiers capabilities that went beyond physical limitations. Neural interfaces allowed for instantaneous tactical communication, turning every soldier into a potential strategic node. The line between individual and collective intelligence blurred completely. Captain J. Kim watched the final strategic sequences unfold. The collective's leadership was effectively paralyzed. Their technological superiority had become their greatest weakness. Every attempted attack was predicted, every strategic movement anticipated. The surrender, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. The collective's leadership recognized that continued conflict would lead to their complete systemic collapse. Humanity had not just defended itself, it had demonstrated a fundamentally different approach to conflict and survival. Quantum communication channels carried the final negotiations. Instead of demanding total submission, human diplomats offered a path of limited reintegration. The message was clear: cooperation was more valuable than conflict. Lieutenant Kong Min's final report was simple and direct. They had not just won a war, they had fundamentally changed the understanding of military strategy and species interaction. Dr. Yoona Kim's research teams were already analyzing the technological exchanges. What had started as a defensive war was now an opportunity for unprecedented scientific collaboration. The battle had revealed something profound about humanity. Their greatest strength wasn't technological superiority or military might. It was adaptability, creativity, and an ability to see potential where others saw only conflict. As the final surrender documents were processed, Captain J. Kim allowed himself a slight smile. They had done more than defend their colonies. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. The collective had provoked the wrong species. And now, they would learn the true meaning of that mistake. The war was over. A new chapter of galactic interaction was about to begin.